There's controversy over a community garden in Ridgewood. We'll get into that. This is Nuance. I'm Mike Scala, an attorney, an MC, and a decent man in the city of demons. Is that how it goes? If you know, you know. I'm joined as always by Jay Carter, also known as Timid, hip hop artist in the chair of BLM Tokyo. What's up, Jay?
Good morning, at least for where I'm at.
Yes, time differences. You are in Japan, so it is what, 8 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock. What time is it there?
8 a.m.
8 a.m.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Good morning to
Feeling
you.
ready.
We are joined as well this week by Christina Wilkinson, and she's going to be speaking about this issue. She has been very involved in it, right? How are you,
Mhm.
Christina?
Oh, thank you for having me.
Sure, sure. So let's get right into it. This is a community garden we're speaking of, and it's in Ridgewood, Queens, right? Now, I understand this was part of New York City's Green Thumb program. Is that right?
It is now, yes.
Okay, okay. So can you get into the history behind how this came to be?
Sure. So back in 2009, New York State sued New York City because they did not have the Newtown Creek wastewater treatment plant in Greenpoint up and running in a timely manner. So they got fined. And the settlement included $10 million that was supposed to be invested back in the community in environmental projects. So there was a whole vote that happened among community members, and projects that were nominated were ranked. The list went to the DEC, New York State DEC, and they took a look at them and decided which ones they thought were feasible and which ones weren't. And one of the categories at the time, it was called tree planting.
Mhm.
So I believe that came in fourth. I don't remember exactly, but there were other projects ahead of it. So it took some time to get to that one on the list. And so I believe it was around 2014 or so that they said, okay, we're ready to start working on this. They asked for volunteers from the community to help find locations for tree planting. And I volunteered to represent Maspeth because the three communities that were supposed to get the funding were Greenpoint, Long Island City, and Maspeth.
Okay.
I found a bunch of locations that I thought would be appropriate for environmental projects, and um, they looked at them. They had landscape architects go out. They contacted other city agencies to see if the land was available because it was all city-owned land. And they came back to me and said, unfortunately, none of these projects that you uh, requested are going to work. And then I was faced with the prospect of us not getting anything on this side of the creek. Um, so I looked at the map because they also said that the criteria was the project had to be within a half mile of the creek, Newtown Creek. So I looked at this section of Ridgewood
Hmm.
and I said, you know, this actually is within a half a mile of the creek. So I proposed it, and lo and behold, they said, hey, this one would work. So um, more years went by. I was attending a lot of meetings back and forth. This site is on New York City Department of Education property. It is part of the Grover Cleveland athletic field for Grover Cleveland High School. Um, and it's a corner of the property that's very sloped, so they can't use it for athletic purposes. So it
Right.
was really just a weedy lot. And obviously, it was an eyesore. We thought it could be used in a better way. And so Parks took a look at it and they said, I think, you know, we think that it would work as a community garden. So, okay, great. So back and forth between parks and education departments to try to come to an agreement because one entity owns it and the other one is going to run it. And I think that took about 9 years or so. I kept checking in, checking in. They kept saying, oh, we're working on it, we're working on it. And then one day I read a press release from Green Thumb saying, hey, we're opening a community garden. And I was very surprised because, you know, I had no idea.
Right.
And originally, I had thought of there's another community garden in the community, Ridgewood Community Garden, which at the time was being evicted from MTA property underneath the M train. And I thought they would be a natural fit for running this garden, but for whatever reason, they didn't feel like they could take on the additional responsibility. Over the course of all of this time, they actually found another location actually on the main campus of Grover Cleveland High School, and it's a beautiful garden, run very well. But I don't think they felt like they had the capacity to take on this whole other site. So
Okay.
then it went to Green Thumb, and Green Thumb said, okay, we need to start up a garden and we sort of have somebody in mind. And um, I met her. She was very nice. Her name was Laura. Um, we had a block party here where I live, and we were signing people up for the garden. Everybody was excited. It was still,
What year was this?
I'm sorry,
What year was this?
2022.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And okay, and for those who aren't familiar, can you briefly explain what the Green Thumb program is?
Okay, so the Green Thumb program basically runs all of the community gardens that are city owned.
Right. Okay.
So this would be one of them. There are other gardens that are privately owned, and their rules basically wouldn't apply, but they run the majority of the community gardens.
And that does become important here because this is, as we're going to say, it's a city-run
Correct.
garden
It's
on city
public property.
on city property. Right.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So around 2022, this new garden was established.
Well, they said that they had to build it.
Right.
They announced that they were going to build it, and that's how I found out. It was a press release from Green Thumb. So they needed to put a committee together, and originally I was on that committee, and we were talking about things related to gardening, like who's going to do the planting and who's going to water the plants. And we need a treasurer and all of this stuff. And I said, hey, I can help out because I've been involved with nonprofits for a while. I know how to apply for 501c3 status, and that will make us eligible for grants and all of that. And, the other people involved were like, no, we don't want to do any of that. We're going to use Open Collective and all of this. And I was like, okay, whatever. Um, but then, it didn't seem like it was coming together. It was kind of disorganized. And I do a lot in the community. And I said, I'm not the best gardener at all. And I think I need to devote my time in other ways.
Right.
So I stepped back from the garden. I said, good luck, guys. If you need me, or if you need me to help with anything, I'll be happy to help, but I really can't be involved. And obviously, because, this thing was sort of like spearheaded by me originally, I was interested in it still. And I would check in while they had a very active Instagram account, and they were posting all photos of the progress, and it was getting pretty exciting. They were having a ribbon cutting and everything, and it was all about gardening up until last year, I guess summertime, and then it became about a whole bunch of other things that had nothing to do with gardening,
Mm.
and it became more and more exclusive, where, if you did not believe in some of the causes that the people running the garden believed in, then you really weren't welcome to join them. And that's when I said, this isn't right, because you can't compel speech on public property.
Right.
Everybody has the right to participate in this, and it shouldn't matter what your opinion is about anything other than gardening and how you're going to get the garden in order.
I'm
So
just I'm just curious, could you give an example of one of these opinions that they were excluding people for?
sure, I mean, I don't know where to start actually. Um,
Just one, you don't have to go.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to do one that's very personal to me because I am a
Okay.
registered dietitian.
Mhm.
And if you read their list of things, it says that they celebrate and center fat bodies. And I
Mm.
know, I mean, I'm certainly not um, in favor of anybody mocking somebody who's overweight, but we're not celebrating obesity. You know, the whole purpose of providing fresh fruits and vegetables is to help battle that, you know, health issue in the community, as far as I'm concerned. So I could not sign something that said, you know, I agree with this. And
Right.
What is that? I'm curious, like, what does that have to do with the garden, setting the garden up and getting it working? That's I'm
Doesn't.
right.
like, they were asking you to people to sign it to
Yes.
participate?
Yes. You have
Okay.
to believe in their position on Palestine. You have to believe in their position about transgender rights. You have to believe, I mean, the list, they have nothing to do, the demands have nothing to do with gardening.
Right.
Um, and
Mm.
I just said, you know, this is wrong. I mean, there are people that are being um, discouraged from participating because you have to pass this litmus test and sign on to this pledge.
Now, who came up with this pledge? Was it a committee? Was it one person? Who did this?
Well, see, I don't really know what happened because I had left
Yeah.
and they sort of did something on their own. But if you, I think the link is still up. There's a link tree that they put up, and it had a link to a survey that they did among their members.
Okay.
And even if you look at this survey, the answers still are not to this extreme.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, there might be one that says we should acknowledge that we're on Lenape land. Okay. Um, uh, but all of these other things, these really extreme positions, were not taken by anybody in this survey. So I really don't know who was behind that, but obviously it's somebody who's suing right now in court.
Right. So we'll get to the court case in a minute here. I saw a Reddit thread about this, which was kind of funny because someone was saying they wish that people can just come together and garden and not focus on political issues or, you know, opinions on different things. And someone else, I guess, who was involved with the garden was very adamant that no, you're not welcome here unless you subscribe to these
Right.
beliefs. And, you know, I think the person was quoted as saying, like, yeah, I'm not gardening with a bunch of Zionists. So we're getting rid of them,
Right.
that kind of thing. So,
Well, and I will say that the other community garden on Grover Cleveland property,
yeah,
the community garden, a lot of their members probably hold those beliefs.
sure.
That's not part of their you know, membership process. They're not forcing anybody. They're just saying,
Mm.
hey, come down and help us plant. That's you know,
Right.
it's
I also heard, and this is again, I saw this on Reddit, that people were being discouraged. I think you alluded to this as well. People who didn't fit certain demographics were being discouraged from joining, and they even had certain days where only certain people were allowed demographically.
that's right. So
Wow.
Can you give an example of that? What is that? That's kind of
I'm
odd.
not exactly sure. I just saw it on Reddit. It might have been
I'll
trans,
explain,
but
sure.
you can tell. You
So
can tell.
they, I believe it's Thursday evenings, they have uh QT BIPOC uplifting moments. I think that's what they call it.
Okay.
So
Hmm.
queer and transgender and you know, people of color.
Right.
Hmm.
But it's exclusively for them. And if anybody else shows up, they're told, no, no. You know, now I don't think you're allowed to turn people away from a public garden
Right. And that's what
because
Right.
we
they
have to
don't fit a
stress. This
certain
is
demographic.
city-owned garden. So it's government-owned, government-run, on government property.
Right.
Government is
Right.
not allowed to discriminate that way.
Right.
So let me get this straight. Like, so on Thursdays, anyone outside that group wasn't allowed to visit the garden? Is that
Right.
what that is?
They were turned away or they were told, oh, you know, we're having our own thing. And I do know that before the season started, I think the day before, I think it was March 31st. I'm probably going to get the name of this wrong, but it was Trans Visibility Day or something.
Okay.
Okay.
And they had posted it on Parks's website as a public event.
Hmm.
And then when you got to the garden, it said private event. So, you
Right.
know, they're supposed to host public events and they're making them private.
Mm.
It's really just not
Now,
acceptable.
does this only apply to people who are seeking to become members of the garden, like if they
No.
start garden, or just to show up and they'll try to kick you out if you just show up?
Oh yeah. Yeah. They're discouraged.
So
And, you know, there is an LGBTQ community,
Sure.
but if you're LGB, they don't want anything to do with you, it seems. So I know people
So-
who are in that community that have tried to go, and they're like, no, 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 it's only for queer and transgender today or whatever. So
Right. So even if you are, hypothetically, even if you are a supporter and you were showing up to support
yes,
that Trans Visibility Day, they're like, no, no, go away.
right,
This is not for you today.
right.
Okay. But and again, I think it's important to keep stressing that this is a publicly owned, a government owned uh, area, which that type of discrimination is not legal from a
Right. So I mean, they are the stewards of the garden, right? So it's a public space, but it's run by, if you want to call it a private group. But I mean, they have to abide by rules that the city would have to abide by,
Sure.
and they're not
Right.
doing that. They're creating their own rules, and they're openly discriminating against people.
Right.
Sure.
Is there
Now
any
let me.
association
Oh, go
with the
ahead.
Ridgewood Tenant Association? I know they've been involved in some controversy in the area as well. Are they involved in this at all?
I haven't heard that there's a
Not you,
connection.
okay. Okay, go ahead, Jay.
I was just gonna say, just to try to hear the other side, have they given any sort of reasoning or argument why some of these limits or some of these tests are necessary? What's their reasoning behind
Well,
it?
I think in the court papers, which I guess we'll discuss
Yeah.
soon,
Mm,
they did say that they're a marginalized community and they want to feel safe, and so they feel justified in doing this.
okay. Even though it's public, government owned.
They
Okay.
feel like they have the right to do it. So,
Okay.
Right. It seems like they're almost running it as if it's their own private garden as opposed to a public one.
Right. That's what it sounds like.
right.
Yeah. Now, this is part of the court case as well that we'll get into. Wasn't there some kind of memorial that they built that was controversial?
Yeah. So, Cecilia Gentili was a transgender activist,
Okay.
and I believe she lived nearby. And they erected what they called an altar to her.
Hmm.
And I didn't think that was appropriate because an altar is a religious thing. And if you're going to allow an altar for this, and they were calling her Saint Cecilia, so there really was a religious
Wow.
connotation to it.
Right.
In fact, later on, they renamed the garden unofficially, but Saint Cecilia's Garden. So I said, I don't think this is appropriate because now you're bringing a religion type thing into the garden. So everybody has to be allowed to put their altar there. I mean, like, I think that's going to
Right.
cause a problem.
It's a legitimate First
Sure.
Amendment concern.
Right. So they're acting like, I'm anti-trans and that's all the rhetoric now because I said that, this is this
Right.
is a legitimate First Amendment concern.
Right.
And I don't think we want altars, for, 5 different religions now in
Sure.
the garden.
I think we
And
talk
what
about
is
this. We talk about this a lot on here. This idea that it seems like the nuance is often lost in these conversations, right? Like if you come out and you say, listen, there is a First Amendment, there are rules, there are laws that we have to abide by. People
Right.
sometimes don't want to hear that, and they want to paint you as just anti, right? A bigot, a hater.
Right. Oh, they've been doing that to me.
Well, shut down the conversation entirely, right? And then you can't really have meaningful, nuanced conversations.
Right. Right, exactly. And look, when I express my concerns to the Parks Department, I never mention anybody's race. I never mention anybody's religion. I never mention Palestine or any of this. I just said, I don't think it's appropriate, number one, for a religious structure to be placed in this garden, in this public space. And I also don't think there should be a litmus test for people who want a garden, that they have to agree to all of these political positions because this is supposed to
Do
be
you
open.
happen to have a copy of that litmus test so we can see what else is on there?
Oh yeah, I have it. I don't know if I could pull it up right now, but
Well, okay. I was
maybe
gonna
I
say,
or
can.
what is it on their website or something like that?
So they used to have oh yeah, there we go. I don't
Is
know, can
there
I
a way?
send it
Yeah, can
into
you give,
Zoom
or
You could
just
just read, I guess
the
read off
link?
some
Tell
of
me
it.
the link
Yeah.
or read it off. Yeah.
Well, it's a link tree.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So is it the link tree from their
Yeah, Linktree/Sunset Garden Ridgewood.
okay, that's I'm I'm curious. Um
You got that, Jay?
link tree Sunset Garden
Ridgewood.
Ridgewood. Let me see if I got it here.
Now, was everyone
Um
asked to sign this pledge just by appearing at the garden? Like if I just were to show up, they would ask me to sign it, or is it only if I said I wanted to become a member, or who was presented with this pledge?
So they really only had, I don't know if they had signups in person. I assume they did, but
Okay.
they were really running the membership through Instagram, which I also thought was sort of discriminatory because you've got
Hmm.
a lot of people who are not on Instagram that probably would like to sign up. But their sign up form was on a link tree on their Instagram. They don't have a website. Um, I didn't see a phone number or anything like that. And you have to click on this link that says become a member, and then it says, these are our community values. Click on this link, and if you agree with this, then you can proceed.
Okay.
And then you
okay,
had to
so I
click a
found
little checkbox to say that you read it and you agree with it.
Okay.
okay, so I'm seeing the community values page. Okay, here we go. Um looks like it's about a 9-page document.
Wow.
Well, it's translated into
Okay.
Spanish as well, so maybe
Okay.
half that really.
Okay, so let's see. The first one just about we have a big responsibility to the land. The garden engaged in practices that show respect for the land. Talking about not using avoiding chemical fertilizers, etc. Um, we're committed to growth, self-reflection, self-awareness. Okay, here we go. I think in the fourth. We uplift our community members that are most oppressed within the bounds of capitalism and colonialism. We center and celebrate our queer, trans, disabled, chronically ill. There's a big list here. Refugee, fat bodies, etc. We commit to interrupting violent behavior or rhetoric that expresses all forms of hate. Okay. We challenge the binary. Okay. Okay. We learn from mistakes, so we challenge white supremacist values of perfectionism. We practice giving and asking consent. Um, okay. Yeah, I think those are the main ones here. That listen, as an activist group, that's what it sounds like something to do, but as a community garden, it doesn't seem to have a place in this area. And I've been in activist spaces. Like this is
Yeah.
not, you know, um, something
Well,
that
was
seems to
there
be
some
related to a garden.
was there something on there about Israel and Palestine as well?
It
Um,
says that, like, Zionism is a form of violence or
Okay.
something, and
Okay.
let me see here. I'm not seeing it specifically. I'm just doing a search here.
You see, I think,
Um,
I mean, this is probably not what they were going for, but they would have been better off just saying something like, we don't abide discrimination here. Everyone is welcome, right? We're all equal, something like that, something
right, exactly.
uplifting and neutral,
right.
right? Oh, and that also shows respect for traditionally marginalized communities as well, but it's not exclusionary.
Right. The
Right.
only mention of Palestine I see in this document, and again, I'm just doing a search here in these values. It says that Sunset Garden stands in solidarity with the oppressed and marginalized people in our own neighborhood and across the globe, especially Palestine, Congo, Sudan, Hawaii, Bordeaux, as well as with land and water defenders globally. And then they talk about genocides, etc. But nothing that says like you have to agree with. It's not one of the tenets of agreement
Oh,
here.
but isn't
At
that whole
least that's what
document?
I'm seeing.
Okay, that's not
So
part
I
of that
think,
document that you have to say that you read and agreed to before joining?
Not from the search. Now, I'm
so
specifically
I think,
searching for Palestine, Israel, something like that, and nothing is coming up.
so it was originally, it said Zionism, like where it said that it was going to interrupt the violent rhetoric, and it said white supremacy. Zionism was included in there, but they've been editing it
Hmm.
because they were in negotiations with Parks for a
Okay.
while,
Okay, because
and I
yeah, I
think
don't
they may
see
have taken it
Zionism.
out.
Yeah, Zionism isn't in here presently.
Right.
Yeah, I think I have a downloaded copy I can send you guys if you want to see it, but
And for those out there who are wondering why is this a problem, we go back to the fact that this is a public community
Right.
garden and it's
Right.
on government land, it's government owned. And so if you are a member of the community and you want to go out there and utilize this public resource, effectively now you have the government saying you can't unless you believe in certain views, and that's a violation of your First Amendment rights.
right.
Absolutely, absolutely. And being opposed to having this litmus test does not equate to being opposed to some of these issues, right?
Right.
You
Absolutely.
could be opposed to genocide. You can be
Sure.
opposed to um, transphobic behavior, but uh, saying that it doesn't have a place here in this community garden, you can't exclude people, does not equate to you being transphobic or any of that.
Right.
Right.
All right.
So.
So we know there were people who were upset by this, right? What was going on there, and there were complaints made to Parks. And so I guess prior to the lawsuit being filed, did Parks take action against this group?
Yes.
Okay.
So they gave them warnings. So this started last year, in fact, and the garden closes every year on October 31st. And so I think back in September, they were warned about things that they needed to change. There were rules, regular garden rules that weren't being followed. They weren't open at the during the hours they claimed they were going to be open. They have to be open a certain number of hours a week, and they have to post the hours on the fence that they're going to be open, and that wasn't happening. And they would
Mm,
say on Instagram that they were going to be open, and I'd walk down there and it's locked. And so really basic stuff they also weren't
Mhm.
following.
Right.
And I thought it was going to be taken care of over the break, and then I was surprised to see that they were back. And in fact, it seemed like they were emboldened to do it even more. Um,
mm,
renaming the garden, that happened this year, and having all of these protest events about, and they were they were talking about me at these events, which
Mhm.
because I'm the evil person that did all of this to them. It's not them. They didn't do this to themselves. It was me.
Yeah.
So, um,
mm.
yeah, I mean, it's they were given multiple chances to fix it. And in fact, in the court documents, there are emails back and forth that they submitted, which shows that Parks was trying to work with them and get them to adjust their pledge there and or remove it, and they just weren't budging. And then they went out and got an attorney and said, we're not leaving, and we're going to continue to do what we're doing.
Okay. So Parks moved to evict them,
That's
essentially.
right.
Okay.
Parks moved to a victim, I believe it was the beginning of June. They got a warning, a 30-day warning in May, and it was like June 2nd or 3rd, I believe they were supposed to be out, and they filed this thing at the last minute to stop the eviction, and they've been in court ever since.
Okay.
I'm so curious what angle their lawyer is going to try to
Well,
take.
here's what's interesting about it. So I read the court papers, at least the ones that were filed initially in the state Supreme Court, and they're arguing that their First Amendment rights are being violated
How?
because they're saying that the government, I guess, is discriminating against their right to put the shrine up, which they're saying is like their expression. So what they're saying basically is it's not a political issue. What they're trying to argue, I think, is that the government is discriminating against them for being queer, being trans, right, being celebrating these figures, and saying
Mm,
that they should have a right to do that. And basically, their speech, right, their freedom of association is being is being infringed upon by the government for trying to evict them because they had it there.
Well,
Let
not
me ask you
necessarily
this.
that, but the pledge they thought was also their First Amendment right to speech,
Right.
having that pledge.
Let me also ask for the person that they were putting up this shrine or memorial, was that person in any way connected to the garden? Like a person that worked with the garden and
No,
put in effort? So it's
no,
just someone that was an activist that they wanted to honor and they wanted to
right.
use it.
That it's
Right.
their community. So again, it's, all focused on them, who they feel they
Right.
are and who they want to honor. There was no consensus among the garden members that, that this is what
Right.
we should do. They just did it. And
Mm.
it's
Could that be why they didn't want to be a 501c3? Were they afraid of being outvoted or something? But maybe they wanted to retain more control over what happened there. Like, let's keep it to a smaller group.
I really don't know what their motive was. I just know that sort of that open collective system was something that was utilized for mutual aid during the pandemic, and I think they were just used to using it, and
Okay.
so they felt comfortable with it, and they wanted to,
Yeah.
they didn't want to even set up a bank account. I mean, it was, everything against the system. They were fighting the system, I guess.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So so the city's moving to I guess evict this group from being the organizers of the community garden, which I assume they would replace with someone else that's gonna, honor the rules as far as public things go. Um I'm wondering how is it that the city is having trouble doing that? Can't they, since it's the city's garden, can't they just say, okay, you guys can't do this anymore.
Yeah,
We're changing direction.
what I'm hearing sort of like behind the scenes is that they want them to leave, but they also don't want to not have it accessible to the community in the interim. And
Right.
but this situation can't continue with the discrimination. So, I mean,
Right.
they're going to end up in court again, this time sued by, other people,
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to
for
continue.
letting this discrimination continue if
Right.
they
Right, right.
don't
So,
Couldn't the
act.
city just say this is couldn't the city just put together an interim group and say, okay, you guys no longer have access. This is who's taking over now
Sure,
because it is our garden.
yeah.
We own it.
absolutely. They could even just
So,
padlock it. I mean, and I know they don't want to do that, but there needs to be
right.
a cooling off period here because I think whoever takes it over is going to have problems with this group.
So if
Right.
that's the
Well,
case, then I can see the case where people might say, okay, well, the city's allowing this to happen because they could just
Right.
yeah,
push them
exactly.
out. So
Well,
there's
And
they
another
so
case right
when it
they
first
withdrew
went
their
to
case.
court, right? When it first went to court, wasn't there, a hearing, and then there was a preliminary injunction that was going to be signed, and so what
Right.
happened? That put things on hold, right? When it got into that
Well,
case.
okay. So the judge says he wasn't going to sign the preliminary injunction because uh, Parks agreed to negotiate with them.
Okay, and just to be
And
clear now, so this is the group suing the city, right? Because they're trying to challenge what the city decided,
right,
and so they were seeking a preliminary injunction, which would have stopped their eviction,
correct.
right? Or paused it at least.
Right.
So, right, okay,
I
so
mean,
the
they
judge
got
is
it
not going forward.
temporarily until they had their hearing, but then
Right.
after the hearing, the judge said, I'm not signing this.
So that was a temporary restraining order, I think,
Right.
which was
And so
initially.
then it was basically lifted, but there was like a handshake agreement between the plaintiffs and the defendants saying, we're not going to evict you while we're negotiating.
Okay. And if you read the transcripts from the court hearings, it didn't seem like the judge was too sympathetic to the group. It seemed like he really was more on the city side of this.
Right. Right. And, I do think that he wanted to look into the issue about the altar.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was interested in that as like from an art perspective. Was this something that
Oh,
could be
right. That's a good point too. Didn't the city at one point offer them to convert it into an art installation, but
correct?
it
Yes.
required them to get an insurance policy on it, and they didn't want to do that?
Right. Right. They gave them options to basically get what they wanted, and they turned their nose up at it. So, I mean, how much more can they negotiate? At some point, you just have to say, okay, like we're at an impasse, and they the plaintiffs ended up withdrawing their state case, and
Right.
now they
So,
want to file in federal court.
right, that's what is being reported, that they want to take this to federal court. So maybe they didn't like the way it was going in the state court. Maybe, they saw how the judge was responding to all of this. It did strike me kind of as odd how the city seemed to be winning, but then they asked the judge not to step in, or I guess it was part of the negotiation. I guess they're just really trying to work something out with the group.
Yeah, I think they just wanted it to end amicably, and I understand, like, you don't want a big controversy and all of this,
Yeah.
but I mean, you also have to realize who you're dealing with. I mean, for them to come up with this pledge in the first place, these are not reasonable people, unfortunately. And they claim, oh, we tried to work on everything that the city asked us to work on, but they didn't. I mean, it like, why, as you said before, all they had to say was everybody here has to treat each other with respect, no discrimination, none of that. And I think they'd still be there and everything would be fine. But they chose to be very specific in who they wanted to have run, work in the garden with them. So it's never going to be resolved in their favor.
Right. Because I think it looked like the judge was about to deny the preliminary injunction, right? I think he said
Right.
basically as such, right? He wasn't going to sign it. But then I think, didn't the city kind of push back on that and say, well, we're still negotiating. We don't want you to make that ruling yet, or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, but then after the last court hearing, I think the city said, I think we've had enough.
Okay.
And and there's no temporary restraining order stopping the city from evicting them. They can
Right.
evict them at any time. So I really don't know what's happening there now. I walked past recently and I did see that there were new signs about composting hours, but that's sort of run by somebody else. So I don't know how active it is right now. If they're coming and going, their Instagram has not been active since mid-July.
Okay.
Um, so it doesn't seem like they're having events there anymore. Um, so I don't know what is going on between them and Parks right now.
And
The altar is still there.
okay. And for those wondering why they would be taking it to federal court, the federal courts do have jurisdiction when there's a federal constitutional issue at play. So that signals that they're really going to push hard on this First Amendment argument.
Right. I mean,
Okay,
I
so
looked at
I
the
was
court case that was filed,
Mhm.
or the papers that were filed. I don't think they served the city yet, but the federal court papers basically are almost word for word the same as
Same.
the court papers that they filed in state court. So, if it didn't work in state court, I really don't see it being successful in federal court,
Mhm.
but we'll see.
okay. I was looking at a different, I guess I was looking at a different Ridgewood Community Garden Instagram page.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's the other garden at Grover Cleveland High School, the one that's run very well.
Okay, right. That's what I was looking at. I was like, wait a minute, they just posted yesterday.
So Sunset Garden actually privatized their page. So you can't even
Yes, I
see it
see
now.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a private account now.
Right.
Okay. And they've got an online, so they've got petitions here. They've got a change.org petition. It looks like they had an upcoming eviction on June 4th,
Right.
which um,
wait,
sounds
June?
like
That
June
got
4th.
stopped because of the court case.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that was when they were originally going to be evicted, right?
Right.
So who's running the garden now and what's happening there kind of on a day to day?
I don't know.
But is it still active? Are still people going out there and are they
I
held? I
I
guess
would
they're not.
assume so. All of their stuff is still in there.
Okay.
I don't really have time to walk there when it's open, unfortunately. I'm out
Okay.
doing other things, but yeah, I mean, all of their stuff is still there, and in fact, outside the garden now, there's planters that they just painted, and I forget. I think it says something like "Let trans lives grow" or something like that. So they're adding messages and stuff.
Right.
Now that's outside. Maybe they're not allowed to do it inside. I don't know, but they certainly
Right.
don't seem to have given up.
Let me ask you this. Do you think those types of messages would or should be allowed if everyone were allowed to put whatever they wanted? So if someone put let trans lives grow because they believed in that, but then someone else had a different kind of message, I mean, it can get ugly quickly, but do you think that should be allowed or should none of that even be tolerated?
I mean, honestly, I'm not an expert on this freedom of
Yeah,
expression or whatever, but I do
Mm.
think it would get ugly. I mean, you'll have people putting Trump stuff up there,
right,
and and that doesn't belong in a garden, I don't think. So
right.
I think you just
Right.
have to keep it focused on gardening. I've gone to tons of community gardens in the process of trying to get this one going, and I never saw any of this stuff anywhere else. Um,
Yeah,
and
Right.
but you would go to their pages and sometimes you do see that stuff, but they're not making it required to be a member that
sure.
you agree with all of this stuff.
Right.
So,
Yeah, yeah, I
obviously
just,
you're going to
right.
have people running these things that have their own personal opinions and try to inject it and stuff like that. But,
Sure.
unfortunately, why did parks let it get to this point? They should have been monitoring them and stepping in. And, I'm so like disgusted with that. And
Right.
then
Yeah.
the worst part for me was I expressed my concerns to Parks, and somebody from Parks gave my information to this group so that they could harass me. So,
Okay.
what's going on at Green Thumb? That's what I'd like to know.
That sounds like an even bigger violation,
Yeah. I mean,
personally, because
it's
that Green Thumb is the city government
correct.
Right.
organization, and
I
they're
mean,
passing your information over.
yeah, and I would consider like, yes, I reached out to them via their page, right? It's their the page that they have on Parks's website, and there's like a form, and I filled it out, had my information, and I consider that to be like a 311 complaint, which is supposed to be anonymous, right? You're not supposed to
Mm.
be sharing people's information that call 311. So why did they do
Right.
this? And you know, I have to see this about myself. That garden wouldn't be there if it wasn't for me. And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying
Yeah.
like this is the thanks I'm getting for, getting this going.
No good deed goes unpunished.
That's right.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the limits of freedom of expression. I can see some people looking at it in terms of not the government endorsing a certain viewpoint by allowing expression, but people wanting to come in and use the garden and express themselves as they see fit, similar to how, let's say, you would get a permit to hold a demonstration
Right.
in a park, right? It's, if you have a demonstration there endorsing a certain viewpoint, it doesn't mean the government is endorsing or co-signing
Correct.
that viewpoint, right?
And
So
it's
some people might look at it like
see,
that.
but that's another thing there.
Yeah,
So, so yes, correct. You should be able to go and get a permit to use the garden and express yourself, whatever
right,
your opinion about whatever. However, they are the gatekeepers for those events as well. So you
right.
need to know somebody who is a member of the garden. And I think you have to be a key holder, right? So you have to be like an upper level member. And when you fill out this form to have an event there, you have to say which garden member you're connected with, what your event is, and they have the power to approve or reject. So,
Mhm.
you know, again, let's not to keep bringing Trump up, but if somebody
Yeah,
wanted to go have a
Sure.
let's celebrate Trump rally at the garden, they're going to say no,
right.
right?
Right.
So there's no winning here. It really just has to be neutral.
And,
Right.
and as a public park, you
As a
would
public
expect that
park.
it would be
Right.
Right.
neutral. It shouldn't involve, political messaging
Right,
and
right. And that's the thing too. There's a difference between allowing use of the space for a protest that's going to start and end at a certain time and having a message affixed there. I mean,
Right.
saying, what was it, uplift trans voices or something like that.
Right.
That's a fine
sure.
message to have, but I do think that would also be controversial if that was permanently attached to, the bleachers at a public park or something like that, right? It's
Well, it is
Right.
in the
yeah,
garden. It
right,
is.
right.
They have that there.
So I think that
Right.
becomes the difference.
Right.
Right.
Also, like you
And
said, if you wanted to do something there, you would basically be seeking a license from this group that's excluding people. So it's not just
Correct.
the parks on the whole, right? It's now
right.
this particular group. So
Mm. So what's where's the next line in the sand? Is there, or the next action that's expected to take place in this whole situation here?
Well, I mean, Parks needs to act and they need to remove them and they need to put somebody in there that's going to run it in a fair and impartial way and welcome everybody and not have these litmus tests about, political beliefs. It's really sad that this is, I mean, I never in a million years when I started this thought that I was creating something that was going to be about Palestine or about anybody's identity. It was supposed to be about growing fruits and vegetables and plants and for people in the community who don't have access to that. Um, that's all it should be about. That's what community gardens are supposed to be about. And they're also supposed to host events that bring the community together and
Right.
not
Right.
be controversial and discriminatory. And we have the
Mhm.
opposite happening. And it's just very sad that that's what it's turned into.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's sad that our society now is in a place where even something as wholesome as gardening has
Right,
become so polarized, right?
right,
Like that quote on Reddit, this person said they're not gardening with some Zionists. I mean, typically you wouldn't even ask
right,
about
exactly. Like,
someone.
why are you
Right.
going there and asking what
Right,
somebody's opinion is about Palestine? It's
right,
just ridiculous. I mean, if I was going there to garden, I would talk to people about, hey, how did you get that to grow? I've been having trouble with my
yeah,
tomatoes. Like, hey, hey, have any tips
Right.
for me?
yeah,
Hey, I'm going to be away next week. Can you water my plot? I mean, I wouldn't be talking about the world.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, it's like going to the supermarket or something and saying,
Right,
asking everyone around you what their political opinions are, and then getting mad at the place if it has a certain makeup or something like that. It's not something you normally would do.
right. Yeah, I mean, there's a time and a place for everything,
Right,
and I think that
right.
they're just not getting it.
If I'm looking at the correct page on Green Thumb, or at least on the NYC Parks, it's a Sunset Community Garden in Ridgewood, Queens, Community Board 5,
Yes.
Council District 34. Um, it's the opening hours, the hours of operation are kind of crazy. So it's only open 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. on Wednesday,
Mhm,
5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. on Friday, and
mhm.
10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday. That's it.
Right.
Doesn't
And then
seem
they
very
have their own private hours on Thursday, what we were talking about before.
right. Interesting.
So they're required under Green Thumb rules to be open a minimum of 20 hours a week to the public, but they only have to advertise 10 of those hours, which makes no sense to me at all, because that means they're only going to be open 10 hours a week, which is what's going on. So it's not like you
Right.
walk past on an off day and you see the gate open and they say, "Hey, come on in." It's not like that at all. They have very odd rules. I mean, I think the whole program needs to be revamped and looked at because some of this stuff makes no sense at all. They're definitely not open 20 hours, and they weren't even open 10 hours when I was, observing and reporting to Parks about what's
Right.
going on. So, yeah, very limited hours. And look, I get it. I've been doing volunteer stuff, and you rely
Sure.
on volunteers and when they have time. But,
Yeah.
if you're going to say that that's when you're open, you have to be open.
Right. Yeah. And if you can't, abide by that, then maybe you should, let another group take over or get
Right.
some other members in to take part in this. So,
Right. When your focus is not on actually running a garden, but on your political
right.
beliefs, that's what you get.
All right. So,
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was fascinating, I guess, from a constitutional perspective, just in the sense that they're the ones bringing the lawsuit, even though ostensibly they're the ones who committed the constitutional violation. But they're now bringing a lawsuit saying that their constitutional rights were infringed. And, I'm sure they're looking at it like they're not making political statements, right? They're probably saying, my gender identity or whatever is not political. It's just who I am. So you're discriminating against me for not allowing me to do this here. And, I do understand the idea that you don't want to, you don't want to give credence to hate, basically, right? Like, so you don't want to say, well, hating someone for who they are is a political belief. But it seems like they're doing a lot more than that. It isn't like we said, if they said you can't hate here, that would be one thing, but they're being very restrictive in terms of wanting you to support all these different beliefs of theirs.
Right. Look, I look at this as what they call DARVO. I don't know if you know that term,
No.
but it's deny, accuse, and reverse the victim and the offender. That's exactly what they're doing. And it's,
Okay.
when you catch somebody doing something they're not supposed to do, that's how they react. So it's, you know, that's what this whole lawsuit is. It's, they're infringing on other people's First Amendment rights, but they're going to pretend that they're the victims in the case here. So I don't think it's going to work. And I think the judge is probably going to see through this very quickly.
Yeah. Jay,
I
what's your thoughts
agree.
on that? I don't know if you heard what we were just talking about, but this idea that, from their perspective, or at least their argument, I'm sure they're looking at this like, their identity is not a political discussion, right? And so they might look at it like they're not forcing you to have certain politics. It's just a matter of respecting who they are.
I think it's a common argument. But when you discriminate or turn away others who don't, have that same view in this public space, I don't think that holds up.
Well, what view though are we talking about? Which any of these things that they're talking?
I mean, if that's what they're turning people away from, right? They're saying, well, you're not trans, so you can't be here on this day.
Sure.
I don't think that's about respecting who you
No,
are.
no, I agree.
That's
I
just
agree
about
completely.
exclusionism.
Right,
Right.
right. But I mean, like in terms of their altar or the shrine or however they want to call it,
Yeah.
I could see them trying to push this point that that isn't a political issue, right? That's just
Right.
this is just celebrating our identities. Why are you trying to politicize this?
Yeah, I get that. I don't think should be a point of celebrating identities. We're talking about a public park,
Right.
right? We're talking about one that the whole community should have access to. Now, that the reason why I asked the question earlier about if this person was connected to the park in any way was that I could see if it was like, okay, a member of our organization that helped set up the park that have, gardened here has passed away, and we want to put up a little bit a memorial because they're integral in the park. Uh, I could see that an argument for that, but just someone that's not connected at all. It's just someone that fits their ideology.
Mhm.
It doesn't really hold weight to me. It doesn't seem appropriate to me in that regard.
Right.
Uh,
But I guess that's kind of the point I was trying to hit or tease out, I guess. Is it a matter of ideology or is it a matter of identity? I mean, I think that's at least how they're going to try to frame the discussion, I would think.
yeah, and true enough, but I think, again, we're talking about a public park
Right.
and, it's not about your identity. It's about the identity of the community that it's in. And it's about being open for everyone in there. And I'm not talking about like, okay, to do so, you have to make allowances for opinions that are inherently destructive. Just that it has to be open for people to come in and garden, not,
Mhm.
come in and, push whatever your agenda is or whatever your opposition is. And you very well may have a point in opposing some of the things that you stand for. I read through some of the stuff. I can agree with from the skim for a lot of the things, but this is not the space for that, especially if you're excluding people to do that.
Right. Right. Right.
Well, plus,
Yeah,
I mean, the list is so long of
that
things
is
that you
true.
have to agree. Who's going to agree with, every single point on that list? I mean, what was it like Ed Koch used to say? If you
Yeah.
agree with me, 75% of the time, vote for me. If you agree with me 100% of the time, see a
Right.
psychiatrist,
Get your
right?
head checked.
Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
that's exactly it. I mean,
Yeah.
I could agree with many things on that list, but then that, like the one I brought up before, fat phobic and all of
Right,
that.
exactly.
No, I'm
Right,
not.
yeah,
So
and
I
it isn't
can't.
right, exactly. It isn't just about being bigoted or transphobic. It's really not. I mean, even like the thing about Zionism. So that means that if you happen to believe that
Right,
Israel should be its own state, you're not welcome there, right?
right.
So
Well, and
that is
they
discriminating against your political views.
but they also have their own definition of Zionism too.
Sure.
So yeah, and there's differing opinions on what it means.
Right.
And
Right.
so why are we bringing this into a garden
Right.
situation? Like that's a
Right.
discussion for outside.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it sounds like this group should have their own private whatever it is, whether
Yes,
it's a garden or something else, and then they can, have this view and these open spaces, hold these events. I mean, because listen, if you're having a Trans Day of Visibility or you're honoring someone that was an activist in the community fighting for rights, that's all well and good. So maybe you need your own space for that. It's not a public space that should be doing this in.
right.
Yeah, and I also don't think, for example, having a trans day of visibility would be inherently unconstitutional, right? I mean,
Right.
if this is done in a viewpoint neutral way, in other words, okay, you're allowing space for that, but you're not excluding anyone who wants to participate, and you're also not
Right.
barring other people from doing other types of rallies that you might not agree with, right? But I don't think that's what's happening here.
Right.
They're trying to control the message.
Right. Right. And
Right. And
again, if
that
they're,
becomes the issue.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
Oh, no, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if they're in control of who gets to use the space for events, then
yeah,
it's just going to be one viewpoint all the time.
right,
Right. And I think, that Christina brought up a good point. Like, so again, if the, Trans Day of Visibility, it's not a bad thing to do, but at the same time, that means you're opening it up for someone to come in and do a Trump Day or something like that, or, any other types of thing or extreme viewpoints.
right.
It's best in a public space like that, especially one that's protected by the First Amendment,
Right.
to
And the
just
First
not
Amendment.
have those.
Right. The framework is that again, we say the government, because this may be a private group, but they're on government land and it's a government owned garden. So they do have to abide
Right,
by the Constitution here and the Bill of Rights. Right.
right,
So the First Amendment framework is there can be time, place, and manner, right? Restrictions on speech, but there can't
right,
be viewpoint uh, discrimination. It has to be viewpoint neutral. And so,
right,
you could say that we're going to open up the garden for political speech, okay, but you can't discriminate against the viewpoint, the kind of speech that someone wants to do. So to your
right,
point, Jay, if you're going to start doing that, then you have to allow other groups to come in and do their own protests, their own rallies, their own events at the garden. You can't just say this garden is only open to one type of view.
And I will say
right,
at the beginning, when I was first involved, what the types of events they were talking about having were like kids' birthday parties and,
Mhm.
seat swaps. They weren't talking about doing what they're doing now.
right. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like they need their own space, a private space where they can hold these events and hold these types of discussions or things that they want to do. But this wouldn't be the place for that.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Why politicize, for the lack of a better word, a garden of all things?
I think it's probably it's a space, right?
Mhm.
They have a space. Um, I'm sure they don't have to pay for the space. Like if you get your own, if you're a group of any kind of group and you get your own space, you probably have to pay for it. There's going to be expenses involved,
Mhm.
right? This is a space that they've got and they can utilize for whatever their agenda is, and so that
Mhm.
they're moving in that direction. So,
Except that they can't legally utilize it for
right.
whatever their agenda is, right? Like we said, they have to be viewpoint neutral.
Now, how long has this been going on? That's a thing I'm wondering again.
Um, well, as I said, I think it started to change last summer. So at this point, it's been going on for about a year. And at, when I, as I said before, I thought it would end when the season ended. I thought Parks would step
Right,
in the off season and be like, look, you can't come back and continue to do this, but that they let them come back and continue to do it. So it's still going
right.
on. And then when they did move to evict them, they went to court. So yeah, it's been dragged out for way too long.
Right. So like that again, that brings up that other part that we kind of touched on as well, like where the city is becoming a little bit more liable for allowing it to happen and not taking action against this, because it's clearly a violation of, having this garden here, and the way it's being run.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, I think that they've upset quite a number of people. It's been in the New York Post like every weekend now, it seems like for the last month or so. And
Right.
people are getting very fed up. They're aware of what's going on. They're watching it. And
Mhm.
I know that the city is trying to um, take all of the right steps, but
Right.
it's taking too long.
Yeah. And I just hope that the city attorneys are smart enough to bring up some of these other points that came into this discussion and not let the plaintiffs dictate the entire narrative of this lawsuit. Because when I read their papers, they were focusing on, I think, narrower points than even we covered here. They're not going to want to bring up excluding people based on their identities, right? They're going to want to, like you said, be the victims here, saying that the city violated their rights.
Right.
And so the city does need to say, it's maybe even bigger and more nuanced than this group is presenting it.
Yeah, I think the city will if they have to come back with a response in court. I
Mhm.
think they will because I have seen some papers they filed previously in response to the original complaint, which was not filed by the attorney. They didn't have their attorney yet. The
Yeah.
the plaintiffs, it was filed by the artist that created that altar. Um,
Hmm.
but I think they did a very strong response, and then that was to knock down the TRO. But then they had the second complaint, which they were scheduled to respond to, but then they withdrew the complaint. So they never filed those papers. But I think it would have been a very strong response. And I
Okay.
almost wish it had just played out because then I think this would be over. But
Right. What are your thoughts on that story that came out that said that the city was no longer opposing them because of who they think the next mayor is going to be?
uh, that was something that was being floated by
Yeah.
like, some parks people that were, kind of getting
Mm.
uh agitated with what was going on. They indicated that they felt like, maybe they were backing off because they were afraid that Mamdani was going to be the next mayor and he would sort of like align with the people running the garden and they didn't want to get in trouble. I'm not sure I buy that.
Yeah. I didn't believe it either.
Corporation counsel likes to settle rather than
Yeah.
actually fight. I know this because I've dealt with them in the past. And it's yeah, I think that was a little far-fetched, and I think that was, someone trying to make a headline out of something that wasn't really happening. But
Right,
uh,
right. I do
I
know
mean,
you may be familiar with this as well. When an administration changes in New York, these new lawyers will come in and sometimes they'll be confused about cases that were filed because, these cases can last years in civil court, right? And so sometimes these new lawyers will come in with the new administration and not know what's going on with these old cases. And, maybe the strategy changes, the priorities change, right? That does happen. I know I had a lawsuit that was pending when de Blasio was mayor. Then when the Adams lawyers came in, they hit me up and asked me, "Hey, what's going on with this case?" I mean, they were supposed to be the lawyers opposing me, and they were asking me for like tips and to get them up to speed with the case. Because all the stuff was just new and alien to them. So, and maybe there is a concern that because we are going to have a new mayor most likely in a few months. Uh, if Mamdani is not going to side with them directly, there maybe at least be some confusion or a shift in the focus of the priorities. I don't know.
yeah, but the First Amendment's not going to change no matter
That
who
is
the
true.
mayor is. So,
that was what I was gonna say. That's what I was gonna
you
say.
know,
It doesn't
that's
matter who the mayor is gonna be. Like, it's still the First Amendment is still there.
Right.
It doesn't matter if Mamdani agrees with him or not.
right.
The Constitution is still the Constitution.
Correct.
However, I
Sure,
do think
but I mean, no, but it is true though that the priorities of the city may change, right? And so the
uh,
city agencies and departments may be directed not to prioritize some of these concerns.
Well, but again, if
it's
they're
the
up
First
against
Amendment.
lawsuits from the community for
Right.
being
Right.
excluded from the garden, they're going to have to address it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, on that point, like, I don't know if it's, really reason why they're dragging their feet or whatnot is because they're concerned about the new mayor coming in and the different ideologies. It can sound far-fetched, but we are kind of seeing things like that at the federal level with the Trump administration and, different types of action. So I mean, that could be one reason why people are either believing that this is a possibility or introducing that into the discussion.
Yeah. No, I can see that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, Jay, do we want to put a poll out about this particular topic? Maybe keep it more general, not about this garden in particular, but about the need to be viewpoint neutral in public spaces, maybe, or I don't know how you would
Yeah, I
frame
think that's
that.
probably a good thing. Yeah, see what people have to say in that regard. Um, Not sure how you would actually word that though.
Yeah. Do we want to limit it to gardens only, or?
It probably public spaces. Well, because
But it's
that
more
does
about
open it up
private
kind of
groups,
wide
like
though.
you're right, private groups, community groups that are operating public spaces, right? You know, should they be held to constitutional standards, basically, right? Should they be viewpoint neutral?
But I think I mean, I
They're
mean,
supposed to be,
yeah,
but
they're supposed to be. That's the
if
that's the thing. Like it,
people think that that shouldn't be the case, and should that be the law? What are
right.
people's thoughts
I
on that?
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
mean, you could propose that, but I think I would assume everyone would say yes, I would hope, because I mean, it is the Constitution. It's the
Right.
First Amendment. So,
Well, then I don't know. Is there a poll question there? I mean, because clearly there is some controversy here, right? I think
yeah.
I don't know. That's why I was trying to get to the bottom of really what the controversy was, and I can only imagine some people are not looking at it as a political issue, or maybe that it shouldn't be about politics. It shouldn't be about speech, right, or being viewpoint discriminatory. It should just be about these are to them they might frame it as this is just basic human decency. Why are you trying to trample on this?
Yeah, I mean, uh, yeah, to me, I can understand people making that argument. To me, it doesn't necessarily hold up in this case.
I
It
agree
just
with you.
doesn't, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just
But
trying to
that
figure out,
that
what
defense is
their
often
perspective would
often
be on it.
used.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think to me it's kind of cut and dry, but it would be interesting to get people's opinions on this,
Well,
maybe this
we can ask you about
situation.
community gardens, and that could open up the door to a larger discussion
Yeah,
too, I guess, right?
yeah. I mean, we've seen it's kind of reminds me a little bit of when I was in New York, there was a news article about the public pool,
Hmm.
and there was a specific day of the week where and I believe a specific day or in a specific time where they would exclude people who weren't Jewish because being in contact, I guess, potentially with non-Jews was against the religion for
Oh, during the
women or something
Sabbath.
like that.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly, but
I
there was
think
a day that it
I
was
do remember what you're talking about, but I think it was separating women. I think it
right,
was special hours for women,
right, but it had something to do with the Jewish
but it was
religion.
the Jewish, you're right, because they're not
Right.
allowed to bathe with the men.
Mhm.
Right. And so, but it was a
Right,
public pool.
correct.
And so
Right.
it's kind of similar in the same way. It's like you're using a public space that is supposed to be for everyone for a specific group of people or specific ideology or agenda or religion or whatever,
Right.
and excluding others in the process. So it kind of reminded me of that.
I don't remember how that was resolved.
I don't either. Or if it was resolved, I just remember that was the case, and it's just like, wow, that doesn't
Yeah,
sound right.
yeah.
How so? Um, so I mean, it seems like there are some points where this type of thing has happened, where public spaces are kind of commandeered for personal or private agendas. So maybe there's a question there.
Mhm. That's the poll question you want to ask?
No, I'm just saying maybe
Oh,
maybe there is a question somewhere, or maybe specific about this case. And then when we ask the question, I can link to some of these articles,
okay.
in that regard.
Okay. So then we can do that if you want to make it about this case
Yeah.
and give more
Yeah, let's
context.
do it.
We should be ask
Yeah.
people if they agree that this group, I guess, should be evicted from running the garden, right? So,
Sure.
okay. So the poll question of the week is, should the community group that has been running the community garden, and you said it's called Sunset Garden?
Yes.
Sunset Garden.
Friends of Sunset or something.
Okay. So should the community group that has been running the Sunset Garden in Ridgewood, Queens be evicted for not being viewpoint neutral?
Okay.
And
All right.
discriminatory, you can add an M, discriminatory, right? Or
Okay. So take two.
I want it all together. Okay.
Yeah, take two.
Okay. Should the community group that has been running the Sunset Garden in Ridgewood, Queens be evicted for not being viewpoint neutral and discriminating?
Okay. So yeah, we'll put that poll out and get some feedback on that.
Okay. And speaking of polls, why don't we quickly go over the poll from last week?
Sure, absolutely. So, let me refresh here. The poll we had from last week was in regards to the controversy that was happening around the Sydney Sweeney
Mhm.
American Eagle jeans ad. And so it was just a simple one. Were you offended by the Sydney Sweeney jeans ad? And just a refresher, that was accusations of potential um, eugenics ideology, white supremacist ideology, because they were some people took it as they were painting the blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl as the ideal. Others were saying this was against the extremist progressive agenda. So it became a hot button thing on left and right. So the results here, we got were you offended by Sydney Sweeney G's ad? 22% said yes, 78% said no.
Okay. About what I would expect. I would guess would it be about 80-20?
Yeah. Um, and so, I saw someone say that they think that this was a small group of people on the left, a few vocal minority people on the left that started criticizing it, and then you got people on the right, the MAGA extremists on the right, took those little bits and then blew that up to make it seem like the whole left was talking about
Mhm.
it, and really no one really was talking about it. But
That
it
seems to
became
happen a
this
lot.
massive,
Yeah, we see that a
it
lot though,
became this
right?
massive thing.
Yeah, it's unfortunately also that's just kind of the world that we're in now, where extremist voices tend to be the loudest and they get amplified the most, right? The algorithm
Right.
we talked about rewards that, right? Because they know that's
Right.
where the clicks are, and the retention is, I guess, on social media, and so that's what you
Right.
get, right? It doesn't represent, as we see with these polls, it often doesn't represent the majority of the people, but
Right.
that's the viewpoint that gets magnified the most.
Right, especially you get two extremes with the potential to amplify their voice can make the conversation be the front and center conversation, even if, like you said, people may not have been paying that much attention to it
Yeah.
in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you seen the ad we're talking about, Christina?
Yes.
And what were your thoughts on it, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. I mean, I think it's a play on words, genes and genes, and I think
Sure.
it's been used in the past. And I think you could take any celebrity or well-known person of any race of any background and use them in that ad. I think it was blown out of proportion. Um, I certainly didn't see it as any kind of like white supremacy, some of the things that were being said about it. Um, yeah, I mean if somebody's good looking, you say they have good genes, and then
Right.
you just like sort of use that as a play on words with the blue jeans. I don't know. I thought it was kind of silly.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
didn't think that it was a racist ad or anything, but I also thought that they probably knew what they were doing on some
Oh
level,
yeah,
right? They knew they were going to spark some kind of discussion, at least over it, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I guess it
And I think,
succeeded in that regard.
and I think it really took it to another level when Trump made it more political, because
Right.
he put that message out, this big long message, and he really amplified it, and that made the division grow even further. It might have been like a small murmur of discussion. One of the comments here, though, takes another route. This woman writes, she said, um, she has boobs and a cute butt, just selling clothes, no eugenics, no white supremacy, just the same old nasty sexism and selling jeans, using blonde, blue-eyed woman. Nothing at all untoward with this ad at all.
I think you could put a man in that ad too, though. I just obviously it's women's jeans they're selling, but I'm saying like it could be a
Right,
denim
right.
ad for men's jeans, and you could have like Brad Pitt or somebody in it. I don't know. I think it's I think everybody's sort of reading too much into it.
Hmm.
Right. And I mean, here we go. We just had the discussion about, the politics of the community garden. Now it's the politics of the jeans. Like, everything, all these things that were never political have suddenly become so politicized.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, look, I grew up in the 80s. Things were a lot more sexist back then, and the ads were really bad. So I don't think this is really much.
I think, yeah, and like we mentioned last week when we talked about it, like if this ad had been shown in the 90s, I don't think anyone would have made any sort of a issue over it at all, really. But the air of the time where there is such sensitivity to these things, and there's a justified sensitivity. I mean, we are seeing rise in
Mm.
racism and discriminatory language and practices, and even, we had on what was it, Fox News, one of the hosts like outright just said, "Yeah, I'm a Nazi and I'm proud to be one." And so this is in the discourse now. So I think it's part of it is just the sign of the times, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then of course Trump adding his 2 cents,
Yeah.
and that really amplified it because then it riles up his base to rally against it, and then now we've got a culture war thing happening.
Right. And then it becomes tough to even say, how can we come together? How can we not be so at each other's throats? Because people will say, well, I don't want to come together. I don't want to unite with bigots and haters and people, people who they consider
Right.
evil, right? Because that's how tense things are right now. That it makes everything such like a lightning rod, so political that it's like there could be no unity on anything. And like we said, things that were never even been political in the past now have become politicized. So like, how do we even move away from that? Is there getting away from that?
Right. That's the issue. Can we get past some of that type of stuff? And in the short term, I don't have faith that we can. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better if it does.
Mm.
Um, Someone here, one of the comments says, the right drummed up this fake controversy from the beginning. Almost no one on the left cared until right-wing media said they should, and then some fell for the trap. There's much bigger fish to fry right now. Once we get a working democracy back, we can worry about stupid advertisements. And then there were several comments that said, "Who is Sydney Sweeney?"
I had to look her up myself.
Listen, as we said last week, I had only heard of her in because of the movie Madam Web that she was in, and that was the first time I had heard of her. I didn't know anything about her, and I've never seen her in anything else. But I mean, apparently she's been in a lot of things, and she's kind of one of the actors of the moment. But yeah, I'm not super familiar with her either.
Yeah, I just saw season one of the White Lotus. Season one, yeah, yeah, she was in that, and like I said, I didn't really love her in that, but I would see her name pop up also, just in terms of being the sex symbol of the day or whatever.
Right, right. So, well, there it is.
Okay.
Well, I guess we look forward to hearing how this is going to play out. Hopefully it's the park controversy is resolved quickly so the that it can be used for its intended use for the public, and again, getting these fresh fruits and vegetables out into the community, which
Right.
is sorely needed.
Right. And you see, I think you just made a good point right there. All of this politicalization, all this
Try it. Come on, take two.
no, but all of the infighting and the bickering and the pettiness that we're seeing now, is getting in the way of something like this, which actually is supposed to serve a very useful purpose and is
Right.
supposed to be a benefit to society, right? And so it's like shooting ourselves in the foot as a society, right? Because
Right.
we're fighting over political views and stuff that really shouldn't matter at a garden, and the consequence of that is we're not getting those fruits and vegetables, right? We're not getting more healthy. We're not actually serving the purpose of the garden, you know, and what it's supposed to do in the first place.
Right.
Right. Absolutely. So, all right. Well, we'll have to follow and you know, stay updated on what's going on with this thing.
Yeah. So,
So,
all right. Well, we like to give our guests the bottom line, the last word here. So, any closing thoughts, Christina? What is the bottom line?
Well, I'm committed to seeing it through to the end, and I'm hoping it's going to be something that we can be proud of in the community rather than, something that's sort of an embarrassment right now.
Okay,
mm.
that's a good
I
bottom
think all
line.
communities, yeah, all communities right now need things that bring them together versus bring, you know, further divides them, especially when you take in context of everything that's going on, the craziness that's happening in the country. We need more touch points that bring people together, and remind people that this is a United States. We are Americans. We are a community, and this is. I think that's the message that needs to be heard for everyone.
I agree. So, Jay, where can people find us?
They can find us on YouTube at Nuance Show, as well as Facebook, Instagram, and everywhere podcasts are available. Christina, are you subscribed?
Yes.
Awesome. Absolutely awesome. So we would also love any opinions that people might have. Leave them on the YouTube video, even if they're opposing opinions. The point is to have these nuanced conversations, so that we're not just taking like a tunnel vision view of everything. We're kind of looking at things from different angles, and I think that's needed.
Yes, absolutely. So we thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Christina. As always, we've got work to do. We'll catch you next time. Good night.